I'm going to tell you a story in this video, and it's a story about the mind-body energy connection. This is Jill Lee, founder and director of the Energy Healing Institute. That's enough about me. What do you think of me? This is a story about me. In 1991, I was diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome. I had a 4-year-old son. I had been through a fairly horrendous divorce. My ex-husband had a little trouble making decisions. So in the morning, he would agree to something, and by the time he went to bed, he no longer agreed, and the next morning I would have to cover the same ground, reaching agreement over and over and over again, lather, rinse, repeat. And it wore me down because it went on for 2.5 years, because that's how decisive he is. So when I got my divorce, I moved from Massachusetts up to Maine with my little son and my dog. And I then had to furnish a house, and I had to figure out my life. And I was working. I had a corporate job, and I traveled for this job. And I was in sales, so I was on a quota, and there was all the stress of that. And somehow I don't know, I suppose I didn't eat well, I suppose. I didn't manage stress well. I didn't know anything about energy at this point. And I just went into a decline. And I just felt tired all the time, did not feel well. Eventually, I went to a doctor, got diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome, and was kind of told, tough luck, kid. But I was, 32, 33 years old. That was not the time for me to be told, tough luck, kid. So I started doing some digging, and a friend of mine said to me one day, I will love her forever for this. I wanted to clock her at the time. She said, Jill, I think you have an energy problem. I was like, darling, I am lying on my couch most of the day. You bet your sweet ass I have an energy problem. She said, no. Your chakra's in your aura. Ew, what's a chakra? Said I. Began an exploration. I started learning about energy. I studied with John Friedlander out in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Learned a lot from him, studied with him for many years, and really got connected to the ways in which my energy was influencing my emotions, my experiences, the way I showed up in my life, what I held and didn't process, what I was willing to release and let go. I learned a lot. And I started applying what I was learning. And I discovered a couple of things. One was there was a way in which chronic fatigue made me special. I call that special syndrome when I come across it with clients and when I talk about it with practitioners who are studying energy healing. Special syndrome is the way in which we get attention for what we're holding on to, for what is happening to us. And that there's almost sort of a way in which without that attention, we don't feel whole. So I learned that. And I learned to let that go. I will never forget being at a party. It was a Super Bowl party, and saying to the person who was hosting the party, "Do you want anything that doesn't have cheese? And can you make sure people don't wear fragrances? And I know you really like scented candles, but I have fragrance sensitivities, so I need to not have that. And I'm not doing this type of food. And should I just bring my own food? Would that be better?" And I remember her face watching me. And I got it. Like I was doing special syndrome at a level that was off the charts. And it wasn't actually bringing me anything that I wanted. I was just getting attention. And so that put that little thing to bed. But then I started realizing, okay, chronic fatigue is an energy problem. It's an autoimmune situation where your system starts to kind of work against you, but there's no real treatment for it. I didn't have a lot of pain. I was just exhausted. My organs were just sort of fighting to stay even. And I was doing all these crazy supplements, and I was having all these treatments, and I was doing all this food management. And I mean, it was exhausting in and of itself. And then when I started working with my energy, son of a gun, things started to change. And I started to realize that I had no energy boundaries. I started to realize that I was porous, that my energy was so open that I had no containment. I wasn't holding myself together, and therefore my body was falling apart. Do you see this? This is the mind-body energy connection. I had no clue what was happening because I wasn't thinking of this in energy terms. I didn't have the energy terms to think of it. But as I did the work and as I cleaned up my energy, my body, which was not responding to any of the treatments that I was having, started to respond. Through my containment, I was able to rest. Through my energy boundaries, I was able to hold myself. As I gained energy, the depletion left, and I was hooked. Energy became a huge piece of my life. And not only that, I became aware of how important it is to be conscious, to be aware, to be plugged into myself and my experience, and to the greater cosmos and to the energy of the earth. And as I built those connections, my body healed.